Well, Matt, as you know, last night was opening night in baseball, and today is kind of opening day because it's not really opening day because there's still some teams that will not play today. So it's let's just I guess we could call it opening 3 days.
Yeah, it's an opening back half of the week apparently.
Right.
I don't love what the MLB has done with that. Like I saw something last night and I wholeheartedly agree. I feel like your opening game for the season, unless
Mhm.
you've got, they're playing the Soul Series, which they've
Mhm.
done. They didn't do it this year, but they did it the
Right.
last couple of years where they had some teams go out there and play in Japan. I
Mhm.
I think that's your kind of extenuating circumstance where I'm okay
Mhm.
with the season starting on like a night game, but I like those day games. Like I think in my like mind, an ideal opening day is like Wrigley Field at 1 p.m. Like
Mhm.
that's kind of where the season should start. But I don't have any problems with what Netflix did last night and the way it's presented. My biggest issue is why you build Thursday as like your true
Mhm.
opening day,
Mhm.
and yet we don't have a full slate of games. I think we have like 11 going on today,
Yeah.
but we have to wait until Saturday to get to get a full slate of 15 and all 30
Mhm.
teams in action.
Yeah. I mean, look, we all know that the TV deal um, for the first night, so to speak. That's okay. You can forgive that. You're like, okay, that's fine. You wanna do that. It's a sell to Netflix, and by the way, I thought they did a really good job last night.
Hmm.
Um, the takeaway from Barry Bonds, I thought that was kind of an odd thing, saying that he talked to George Steinbrenner on the phone and said he's going to make him the highest paid player in baseball, but he had to sign by 2 o'clock. So Barry decides to hang up on him and say, "Well, wait, look, I need some time. I'm going to go to lunch." And then the Giants called and he goes, "Well, I'm going home."
Hmm.
Makes a great story, but I'm not so sure it's true. But okay, um, all right. And boy, Paul Skeens didn't get out of the first inning today.
Yeah, no, that was really kind of a shocker in New York with that game. I think when you look at that pitching matchup, Peralta versus Skeens starting that game or
Mhm.
starting really opening day off at 1 p.m. in Queens, that's you would have. I mean, I'm a betting man. If you ask me what I would have done, I would have bet the under on the runs and really with that pitching matchup overall not expected a lot of offense. We're in the bottom of the fifth, and there's been 10 runs scored already.
Right.
So they've come out swinging. Peralta hasn't had a bad day, hasn't had a good day. 6 hits, 7 strikeouts, 4 earned
Mhm.
runs, 80 pitches. He got through 5 innings. I kind of expect him to go back out there for the sixth. Yeah, but Paul Skeens, 2/3 of an inning, 5 earned runs, 4 hits, 2 walks. It's not what you expected out of the two-time Cy Young winner. Um, and really, it's kind of a shock to the system, probably for the Pirates.
Well, we one of the things that I harped on um, for spring training was I kept talking to my buddies and saying, who are cover the Pirates, and say, is O'Neill getting better in center field?
Hmm.
And everybody keeps telling me, yeah. Well, not to first. I mean, in fairness to Skeens, look, you know, he had that ball that was hit that O'Neill Perez could have potentially caught. Then he lost the ball in the sun. He has no sunglasses. I have no idea why that's a problem. Um, so all right, yeah, those are two hits, and those did result in runs. And yes, they kept they kept the inning alive. Now I'm not making excuses because Skeens didn't have his best stuff. There's no question about that. But if Pittsburgh's going to be a contender, which they want to be, and they've got some good players on there. So far they put 4 runs on the Mets, and they haven't looked bad.
Hmm.
You can't do it with O'Neill Perez playing subpar center field. That's the one part of the field because it's so massive. You got to have one of your best athletes out there. No question, he's a great athlete, but hell, if he can't play the field, you better bring him back to shortstop.
Yeah, tall and long. I think their problem with bringing him back to shortstop is really more of the long-term outlook, because right now they
Mhm.
have Triolo starting there
Right.
at shortstop, but where their main contingency is going to be in AAA with Connor Griffin.
Mhm.
His development, hopefully getting him up here. I would guess. I know he struggled in spring training. I still would be a little bit surprised if he wasn't in the major leagues after that window rolls over, where they get that
Well,
extra
yeah,
control.
the extra control.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's basically the first week of June.
yeah. So now you're looking at a situation where you're stuck with a guy who he has to get better in center field. Like he has to. He has the tools. He's got the speed. He's got the size. So the range should be there. It's really more based on your reactions and how you're reading the ball. I don't get the not wearing sunglasses. That's
Mhm.
generally kind of a personal preference. But if it's sunny, you would think that it would be an advantage.
Well, if you're playing at
That's
1 o'clock at Citi Field, you better damn well have sunglasses on.
Yeah, yeah. So unless it's they're expecting rain that day and
Right,
it's
yeah.
extremely
Okay.
overcast. That's like your one exception. But yeah, I think if you're the Pirates and looking through this, like it's a shock that you scored 4 runs on a Paul Skeens start
Mhm,
and you walked out of the first inning or you didn't even make it to the second inning
mhm,
and you are down big. Like this, it's not something where like they gave him 2 runs in the first inning. I
right.
think if I'm the Pirates manager and I see 2 runs go on the board in the top of the first, and I know
Mhm.
Paul Skeens is walking out of the dugout in the bottom half, I'm
I'm
feeling great
happy.
about this game. Like, and so you don't. This can't be something that's any kind of a trend for New York or for Pittsburgh going forward because I mean, if you're scoring 4 runs in a Paul Skeens start and you don't win, that's a
Mhm,
bad start for Paul Skeens, and this one was really bad to start the year
right.
for him.
Well, we're at the bottom of the 5th. Here's this quick scoreboard. Mets leading the Pirates 6-4. Looks like the bases are loaded. Juan Soto up. Um, that's never good if you're the pitcher. Um,
No, this
Cubs and Nats are tied at 2 at Wrigley. That's the top of the 4th. Bottom of the 3rd in Milwaukee, you've got the Brew Crew up on the Sox by a score of 4-1, and the Twins and the Orioles started at Camden Yards, and that game is scoreless. And we are at the mid. Uh, Orioles coming to bat. 4:10 is the Red Sox Reds. That should be entertaining. Angels Astros. That's also a 4:10 game.
oh,
Tigers at the Padres. That's on Major League Baseball Network for those of you who want to catch it at 4:10. Rays Cardinals. That's a 4:15 game out in St. Louis. Then tonight we've got we've got one more 4:15 game, and that's the Rangers the Phillies, and then Dodgers Diamondbacks. That's the game tonight. Dodger Stadium 8:30 on NBC, and then the 10:10 game out in Seattle, it's the Guardians and Mariners. So that's your slate of games for today.
mhm.
And yeah, I on one other side with regard to what we watched today and what's going on is that I really was happy to see NBC back doing baseball. They've always been a phenomenal. They've always done a phenomenal job with it, and I think that it's kind of a nostalgic thing. I grew up watching baseball on NBC. One of the guys who helped me as a director when I first started out was a guy by the name of Harry Coyle. Harry was the dean of baseball broadcasting and directing for NBC, and there's just something about NBC and that logo for baseball that just rings true.
Yeah, and I think part of it is just a credit to the network overall. I think they do a really good job in a lot of what they do. I
Hmm.
mean, you look at the college football games, the way they broadcast those.
Hmm.
Obviously, you've got Sunday night football as well.
Hmm.
They do a really good job with their presentation, especially when it comes to big presentations. They've done a really good job at filling out the booths and the studio talent, right?
Hmm.
So they've done a really good job for pretty much what feels like forever in terms of building out a really good group of people
Hmm.
behind the camera, in front of the camera. in the booth, all of
Mhm.
it. They do a really good job with all of that. And really, I think it's getting back to something that this is in a sport that feels like once we end this season is going to be headed towards something bad. This is a really good positive change for baseball because I think it's going to give you better. I think it's going to give you better depth of knowledge in terms of their presentation of the game. I think it's going to be a better presentation of the game, and overall, it's going to be a plus over having Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN.
One of the things they've done, which I have been praying for years, is the play-by-play guy, who in this case this afternoon is Matty Vetscursion, great play-by-play guy, great guy. You've got an analyst from Pittsburgh and an analyst from the Mets, and there you go. That is the perfect 3-person booth for me.
Yeah.
You know, you give me your national play-by-play guy and 2 local guys who see these guys on a daily basis. And to me, there's no homer situation. You're getting the best information. You're not parachuting, guys in. And look, I have no problem with the different analysts. They're all good. I'm talking about the color guys that come in. Most of them do see a lot of games, but there's something about the local broadcasters and how this whole thing happened, by the way. NBC did this back in the 70s, which is how they got Al Michaels.
Mm-hmm.
So when they went to play the Reds, Al Michaels was there, and whoever else they were playing. If it was the Dodgers, it might be Al Michaels and Don Drysdale. But
Mm-hmm.
the point being, you got to see guys who you may not have seen, who the network had a chance to see.
Yeah.
And so, there's something here that we might want to move on.
Yeah, and it's really, you highlighted that booth. That feels like a dream scenario when you're broadcasting baseball,
Mhm.
because Matt Vasgersian, he's a guy that hasn't really done as much national stuff these last few
Mhm.
years.
Yeah.
You go back to the late 2010s and you listen to this guy call baseball games. He
Mhm.
is one of the best play-by-play guys for
Mhm.
baseball in the country, hands down. I mean, if there's a list ahead of him, it's not going to be long that
Mhm.
do a better job than he does. He does a
Mhm.
great job of feeling the moment. He can live up to the moment with his voice. And then you get the really well-rounded coverage with the 2 guys in the booth, knowing
Mhm.
their teams. Because you're right that sticking the same 3 guys in the booth every Sunday night is great in theory, but when they aren't doing these games, like, you don't get the same depth of coverage. There's just a little more than just reading stats off the sheet for these guys that cover these teams for a full 162.
Right, and it's not. I mean, look, some of these guys are, that they put on air for broadcast, like Tom McCarthy, great broadcaster, Philadelphia Phillies, voice of Philadelphia Phillies. They have Tom on Fox from time to time. Does a very good job. He sees a lot of the guys in baseball, but obviously he doesn't see everybody, and he doesn't see them every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with the 2 analysts on your side, there's interesting situations where they can talk about it from the fact they literally travel and live with these guys.
Yeah.
So you're going to get knowledge there that you're not going to get. So I think what NBC is doing and will continue to do, I think makes a hell of a lot of sense. And for the fans, it takes away that, well, gosh, so and so's a homer. He doesn't know my team. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's no excuse on this one. They do know your team.
Yeah, yeah, it's no longer, the days of, like, you can accuse these booths because they are national. They don't cover a team. Like,
Mhm.
you could accuse them of the bias, like,
Mhm.
and now maybe I mean, you could definitely still toss shots their way
Mhm.
because in all likelihood they're going to be coming from the side that's not winning the baseball game, right?
Mhm. Right.
But really, you have balance in the booth, and that's going
Mhm.
to give you really no complaints from that end.
Right. And again, like I said, you're going to get up close and personal with some stuff that these guys are doing that, frankly, you're not going to get if you've come in to do a baseball game the night before.
Yeah. Yeah.
which is what most of these guys do. They come in the night before, they do the game the following night, and then they're gone.
Yeah, and baseball's a different sport. I think people tend to forget that. Like with football, when you come in, like these guys come in and they got a week. They've got a full week. They've got meetings with the coaches, the players.
Right.
Like you can really dig into some depth, do some good research. You don't have necessarily the same availability of time with the pace and how many games there are in baseball. Things are so fluid and change so quickly in baseball compared to a sport
Mhm.
like football and the preparation that can go into the production of those games.
Well, yeah, because if you're talking, let's talk about college football. On college football, you'll come in on a Thursday before
Yeah,
a Saturday game.
yeah,
So you go to practice Thursday afternoon. Most of the teams don't have practice on Friday. So Friday, you're spending your time talking in the morning to the head coaches and some of the players who they will provide to you. Then that night, the opposing team gets in. They do a walk around the stadium, which I've always thought was kind of funny because they don't do anything. They just literally get off the bus, walk around the stadium, and go to their locker room to see where the locker room is, get
hmm
back on the bus and go to the hotel. But then you go back to the hotel and you're talking to the coaches and some of the players they provide for it too. So
hmm
you've got the opportunity to talk to some players, talk to some coaches. You've seen one team practice. You probably have seen the other team practice at a different time, um, maybe a couple of weeks before, or from that standpoint, or you've watched tape on them. But baseball's not that way. You fly in the night before. You may walk in and talk to the manager in his office.
hmm
You stroll around watching, guys on the field, talk to some of the guys on the field.
Yep.
That really isn't giving you much information.
No.
It's more or less being, playing just BSing with the guy and saying, well, gosh, how's it going? Haven't seen you in a while. What's going on? How's the family? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, yeah. You're just sitting there. You're making small talk while they're
Right.
doing their warm ups, practice, batting
Stand
practice.
behind the batting cage watching him hit the ball.
Yeah, and you can only get so much from that because
Yeah.
they are focused on what they're doing. There's not
Mhm.
necessarily that same dedicated media time, so it
Right.
is a lot tougher.
Yeah. So, well, we're one day in. Oh, we haven't even gotten one day full, but we're one day in tonight. Um, we'll get to see some good baseball with the Dodgers, Padres, and all that on NBC right now. We've got, as I said, we've got the Mets and the whoa. Soto
Yeah,
must have done something because it's 9-4 now.
Soto
Still batting.
singled and scored a run, and then Polanco walked in a run, and then Luis Robert just reached on an infield single, which moved the line yet again and scored another run.
Yeah, this is going to get ugly fast.
Yeah.
The White Sox, Brewers, that's top four. Brewers 4, White Sox 1. The Nationals are on top of the Cubbies by a score of 5-2. That game is in the top of the fourth. It is windy and cold in Chicago.
Yeah, and Matthew Boyd's going to be pissed off about this start. I don't think there's any way to go about this and look at it any other way. This is a start where an inning ago he was sitting. He was sitting at. I think he had given up like maybe 3-4 hits, 2 earned runs, but he struck out 7. He was
Yeah.
on a really good pace, and then this inning it just completely unraveled. Gave up 3 more.
Mhm.
To bring his total of 6 hits, 5 earned, and a walk across it. And he had to be pulled after 3 2/3 after what was a really good start.
Yeah. And Cavalli pitched well for Washington.
Still is, to my
Yeah,
knowledge.
he's a kid from Chicago whose grandfather used to take him to baseball games at Wrigley Field. So in situations like that, it either goes one way or the other, right? You're either
Mhm.
so amped to get an opening day situation where your family's there and a number of your friends, guys you grew up with, and everybody's at the ballpark, and either you have a great day or things go sideways. But you know. It's so far, there's still ways to go. The Nats are up 5-2 on the Cubs in that regard. So we got that. All right, we're gonna play basketball tonight, and here they go, folks. First tip, 7:10, Purdue, 2 seed Texas, who came all the way from the first four on CBS. Game being played in San Jose at the SAP Center, better known to those of you out in the San Francisco Bay Area as the Shark Tank. So Purdue and Texas tonight. What should we be looking for there, Matthew?
You're going to go back to the guard play on both teams. Braden Smith for Purdue and Trevon Mark at Texas. Those are two really, really good guards. Got them really where they are today, steering the ship for both. And it's one where now this is in that Purdue territory, right? Like these Purdue teams, Matt Painter, he's been highly criticized. They're these high seeds. They've gotten upset. They've not lived up to their expectations. This is really, I mean, in terms of what you're getting seating wise for Purdue, this is a dream for you. And something where you don't expect to be an 8.5-point favorite in the Sweet 16, but they've lucked their way into it. But now you have to go win a basketball game against a Texas team that is hot. They've won 3 basketball games. They've played one more basketball game than you, and they were able to carry that momentum throughout the first weekend. Now they've hit a reset button, and I think that reset button for a hot team like Texas probably favors Purdue a little bit more than it does the Longhorns.
How about the bigs on Purdue? Is that going to help? Obviously, they've had some great success, in the paint from that standpoint and rebounding. But Texas is very athletic.
Yeah, a lot more. I would say you're getting a little bit more of a traditional basketball team in Purdue versus a little bit more of an athletic, kind of free flowing. I think Sean Miller really lets Texas kind of play their game, where Purdue they're a lot more set in what they do. They probably like to slow the tempo down a little bit more. But yeah, this is one where you would expect Purdue to kind of get into their sets, slow the tempo down, and turn it into a little bit more of a half-court basketball game that's probably going to play into their favor. Let those big get those offensive rebounds, and then allow them to kind of reset things and keep Texas from running the floor on you.
Okay, so we've got next up the rock fight, which is number 4 Nebraska seeded 4th and Iowa seeded 9th on TBS. That game should tip at 7:30 in Houston. And of course, you've got 2 Big Ten teams, and Iowa coming off of that upset over Florida in Tampa last week. This is like a WWE match here. You got 2 teams that are very, very physical.
Yeah, lots of physicality. Nebraska honestly kind of prefers that physicality. This is a set where they split it this regular season. Nebraska won at home. Iowa won at home. They were both, and I mean, you want to talk about a rock fight? You go back to that first matchup between these 2 teams that was in Iowa. It was 52-57. That was the final score of that game. I mean, you want to talk about a rock fight. Good God. And then you turn around the one they played on March 8th in
the last game of the season.
Yeah, in Nebraska. It was 84-75, but that game went to overtime. So these are 2 very, very comparable teams. They played
Take the under, yes.
Games. So you would expect similar, but this is one of those things where think about home court, and I just talked about how Nebraska won at home and Iowa won at home when they split this series. And this is no disrespect to Iowa or the Hawkeye fans, but the way that Nebraska and Big Red travels is a lot different. And so this is something where you would expect Nebraska to greatly out-fan Iowa in that building, and one where I'm kind of just personally going to lean on the experience of Fred Hoiberg being a former NBA head coach and the success that he's built. They kind of embody him as the head coach. And I think Iowa's a really good story, bringing over Drake's head coach. He brought the 2 guards with him. They've found success back there in Iowa, but this is one that has Elite 8 written all over it for Nebraska. And honestly, either one of these teams is going to be praying, I believe, that Illinois wins their matchup with Houston tonight, because
Right.
Illinois would be the worst team, and they're a team that they'd be more familiar with.
Right. Well, before we get to the Houston and Illinois game, 9:45 on CBS. Back out at the Shark Tank in San Jose. It's Arizona and Arkansas. Arizona has taken care of business. They've looked good in the first two games they played. Arkansas, it's a John Calipari coach team. They've got incredible talent on that Arkansas team.
Yeah, and Coach Cal did a lot more last year in his run than I think people expected with Arkansas in his first year there. This one's a little more expected with year two under Coach Cal, getting some of those highly rated freshmen in there. Acuff obviously leading the way for them in terms of the freshmen. But then you're going up against an Arizona team that is just flat out has recruited a little bit better than you have. They're deeper. Their freshman is, with all due respect to Acuff, Koa Pete might be better. I mean, they're going to go head to head, and it's one of the best freshman matchups that you're going to get all season. Outside of that matchup with Cameron Boozer and Caleb Wilson earlier in the year and Duke UNC, so it's going to be a really good matchup on that end. I just have to revert to as much as I would love for Coach Cal and love to continue to see Darius Acuff play basketball in March because he is that special and he is that good. I think they're just facing a really tough task. I talked about how Purdue, they didn't expect to be 8.5-point favorites in the Sweet 16. This is one where Arizona's getting the best matchup they could have gotten out of that seeding. Like the 4 seed is the highest seed they could have been facing, and they're still 8.5-point favorites. This was expected from Arizona. They are that good, and you would expect that to continue into tonight.
And then we got the Houston, Illinois game that you just referenced a couple of minutes ago. That's going to be on TBS sometime around 10 o'clock.
Yeah, and this is one I said that, you really hope for if you're Iowa or Nebraska that Illinois is going to come out of this thing. I don't see it. I just don't. I know the line's close. Houston's been playing really good basketball. And that's not to disrespect Illinois because they've played some solid basketball. But when you look at their tests, they're just a little bit different. These last two games, they beat VCU by 21, who beat a Carolina team without Caleb Wilson that's now searching for a new head basketball coach. And then in the first round, they beat number 14 Penn. They scored 105 points on them, but they beat number 14 Penn. So when you look at it that way, it's just not something where I like them as much. I think the challenge of Texas A&M was a little bit more than what Illinois faced. I think they're a little bit more battle tested. And to be quite frankly honest, I trust Kelvin Sampson at Houston and what he's built and what he's done there over the years to win a basketball game like this over Illinois.
Dale Murphy, right there. Dale, you now know that Houston's going to win tonight. One thing, too, Dale, and I'm sure Matt is aware of this, it's about a 10-minute ride from the Houston campus to the Toyota Center in Houston tonight. So I'm pretty sure, that there's going to be a lot of red in that building tonight. And it's going to blow the roof off the place. Real quick, Dale, you talked about no one cares about baseball. We do care about baseball. We also care about World Cup soccer. And for that's a Sean Miller thing. So keep an eye out for Sean. Sean will give you all the information you could possibly ever want about World Cup. And we'll get him in here. And he's obviously does his shows as well. So keep an eye out for his shows. And we all want to see the World Cup. There's going to be a lot of fun. Something bizarre happened in the last 24 hours. Now it happens at USF, but this is the thing that we'll talk about. They hired Chris Mack as the head basketball coach, but the one thing that got kind of overshadowed in my mind was that they hired Christy Curry to take over the women's basketball job, and Christy Curry was the head basketball coach at Alabama.
Yeah, interesting that they were able to pull her away. I think that speaks more to Alabama and maybe what their investment is in their women's basketball program. I don't, and that's not to discredit USF or what they've
Right, sure.
or do, but I think it's just more of a point that Alabama does not care. Like they're not willing to make that investment into women's basketball. Um, you go back Tennessee keeping Tony Vitello.
Mhm,
It was something where Tennessee they were a little more willing to invest. That's the reason they lost Vitello to the MLB
mhm.
ranks. So there's varying levels because women's basketball, and it's not discrediting the sport or anything. This is
No.
just the way it goes. Is there's tiers and there's hierarchies, and at those big schools, football's one, basketball's two. I'd say baseball is probably pretty safely three. And then
Mhm,
after that, that's when you can start getting into the weeds. But the matter of the fact is, it does not generate the same revenue. And when you're not a program who has history
mhm,
in women's basketball, it makes it harder to build it because you need really that history and that tradition to kind of make people believe. South Carolina, they had something going into the NIL.
mhm,
UConn
sure.
had something going into NIL. LSU with Kim Mulkey, they had LSU as a women's basketball program may not have a brand, but they had a head coach, and
Right.
that's what it took. So, and there's few and far between when it comes to women's basketball.
Mhm,
And I think part of that may be the exposure problem, but the matter
mhm,
of the fact is that that's what it is. And so when you aren't going to get the numbers out of it, you're not going to see these universities invest. And so that leaves room for programs like USF that reside in that G5 level to go
right.
make a little bit bigger investment and find some more success and probably some better coaching because these schools aren't willing to match the same financial commitment to women's basketball that maybe some of these other programs are.
Well, credit to Rob Higgins. He went out, he heard that she wasn't pleased with her position. But to your point, there wasn't a lot of people willing to go above a certain number.
Hmm.
Rob went above the number and said, okay, if this is what you want, I can get you that money, but I want these things. 3 years, I want to guarantee um, that you will recruit hard, and whether it's through the portal or however you can get them here, I don't care. We're spending on women's basketball. We're spending on men's basketball. So in a way, it all shook out, and I realized how little, and frankly, with the exception of Kim at LSU, uh, little they're paying the women's basketball coaches. I was stunned.
Yeah, it's not a sport that generates revenue, so you're not getting the same paydays across it, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just the way it is, and it's the way
Mhm.
it's honestly probably going to continue to be, because you're just not. They women's basketball had its surge really with Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all of that. And it was an opportunity, and it feels like they missed it. It feels like they missed the opportunity to capitalize when really it was in the headlines and at its peak. And that's now kind of died off. It's gone to the wayside a little bit in terms of dominating the headlines. And now when you want to talk about women's basketball, you gotta, I mean, I guess give credit to ESPN because man, they shove it down my throat every time I open their app up to try to check a score. I mean, I like I was going through, during the World Baseball Classic and those first
Mhm.
rounds of the NCAA tournament and stuff like that. And I'm going to look for, maybe a golf score
Right.
or men's basketball in World Baseball Classic, something like that, and I'm getting the women's tournament shoved down my throat.
Mhm.
But I think the simple matter of the fact is that just as many people don't care, and it's hard to invest in something that you don't see as in what is now a business, an appreciating asset.
Yeah, and I think that the big, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the Big East all right now are investing money in women's basketball.
Yeah,
and the SEC and the ACC aren't.
yeah, and it's hard to blame them. I mean, you look at the SEC and really where those schools have been. They've been like so consistent in football.
Mhm.
That's obviously not going to die off. And then you see really what has been an investment in basketball over really the past decade in the SEC, and how much better that league has gotten at basketball throughout the past decade. I mean, you go back to this time 10 years ago, back in 2016. Like, you look at the number of teams that the SEC got in the tournament, that was a pipe dream for them. Like, that's not something that was happening with any kind of regularity, consistency. It was not a league that was viewed as deep, or extremely talented. It was viewed as something where, yeah, we know the SEC is good at football, but guess what? Once that championship game is played in January, that's it for them. Like, they're done until baseball season rolls around in terms of their success. That's no longer the case. They invest in baseball, they invest in basketball on the men's side very heavily, and they've dominated in those sports in terms of the consistent success across different programs in
Before
that
he
league.
left,
So,
before he left the commissioner's job at the SEC, is Harvey had to invest in college basketball and college baseball.
mhm,
And he said, if you invest in those two, they'll grow, and
yeah,
we will grow with them. And so, look, it's where you allocate the funds, and I get that. For USF, good on them. They got a coach that you know has a tremendous resume, and they're more than happy to welcome her to USF. And as basketball coach, it's got he he did coach at one point, Louisville, but then when things didn't go well, um, he took 2 years off and ended up at College of Charleston, which is where the now coach of Louisville left. So it's kind of a swap from there. But he's, Chris Mack is. It's going to be interesting. Chris is not a young assistant. He's not, a young guy who came through the lower ranks. He's been successful at Xavier. He's been successful at Louisville. He had some issues at Louisville, meaning they decided that a couple of years in, he was doing fine, even for a while was the number 4 seed in the tournament, um, and then had a bad year and fired him. He took a couple of years off, went to Coastal Carolina, where he's average winning 20 games a season for the last 3 years. So I think what they're looking for is, okay, we've had a guy who we've had two football side, one on the basketball side. They both have had success, and they both left.
mhm,
I think that Chris Mack is a little older and not necessarily uh, step back and get, you know, he's not one of these guys looking for his next job.
yeah, you're looking for a little bit more stability and
Yeah.
consistency out of that head coaching spot that you just haven't have. Obviously, there's the unfortunate aspect of the head coach who passed away. Um,
Yeah.
then you have the younger guys that move on, and yeah, he fits a little bit more of that mold where things didn't work out at Louisville for him, and that's I think people tend to view, failure at a higher level as something, as an indicator of like, yeah, you're done, you can't do this. Well, they got to that level for a reason, right?
Mhm.
And typically when you go out there and you fail, the best teacher is failure. That's what people say. And if that's true, then you would expect him to have learned from his mistakes at that level, really a level that they may not have the logo next to their name that
Mhm.
says Big 12, SEC, or ACC,
Right.
but USF, in terms of their athletic department and their programs, is every bit right up there with the likes of a UCF who has found their
Mhm.
way into the Big 12. I
Right.
think their athletics are better overall.
Mhm.
So it's just a situation where you kind of, you would like a little bit more consistency
Mhm.
out of that position for this athletic program, because this is a good athletic program. They view it as such, and I think they're a little bit tired of being used as a stepping stone.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, when they're talking about why he took 2 years off, to your point, he said, "I wanted to find out what I was doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That if you take another coaching job,"
Mm-hmm.
he goes, "So if I was doing something that was I making a mistake? Where was I?" Because I mean, everywhere he'd gone before, success was there.
Yeah.
Um, it's not easy to win at Xavier, and he'd won at Xavier, um, including a big East Conference title. So, and he played at Xavier. So, at the end of the day, I think that you know, Rob probably thought, you know what, this guy, I met with him. I think he's got what it takes. I'm going to roll the dice with him because I know he'll be here in 3 years. I don't know if, where, hot guys who, are at Arkansas State or Kennesaw State or some of those programs. They're good programs, even Akron for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Do I hire them? And then, 2 years later, they're gone and they've taken my team with them.
Yeah.
So I think they went that route, which is hard to argue in that case. And there's going to be a lot of coaches changes as there always are at this time of the year. People looking for, who's my next new guy. But quite interesting. Oh, one thing I don't know if you saw it. Many of you watch the MLB network, and I don't know if you watch Brian Kenny's show, but Brian has a by the numbers type program.
Mm-hmm.
And the off season, who won the off season? According to Brian Kenny and his stats, the Boston Red Sox.
Well, I mean, they're definitely analytical, right? There was a piece that got put out this morning that I kind of woke up to, um, but it was from on X. It's at More Perfect US. It's from More Perfect Union. Piece
Mhm.
by, let's see here, June Lee and Addison Post. But it's 16 minutes, and it talks about how the headline that they go into it with says it's now more lucrative to have a losing sports team than a championship team. And they talk about how the Red Sox have transformed from something that was chasing a championship really into more of the analytical model where they're looking at players as assets. Talked about, how, now the business of college sports is women's basketball may not be an appreciating asset, so they're not willing to invest as much in it, right? That's the way they view players in baseball right now. There's a reason, and dove into kind of the way Alex Bregman's thing worked out for the Red
Mhm.
Sox in this offseason, and why he didn't get the money matched and why he didn't get the full trade clause. Because when they
Mhm.
look at Alex Bregman, they don't see the guy that won World Series in Houston and
Mhm.
was a guy who transformed the locker room. What they see is a third baseman who's had numbers that have slightly declined over the last couple of years, an
Mhm.
injury history, and a guy who's only going to get older. He's on the backside of his prime, right?
Sure.
So what is that? That's a depreciating asset. Do you give a depreciating asset top of the line value? No, you don't. And that's kind of the way their thinking's gone into it. It's the reason that they traded Nomar. It's the reason they traded Mookie Betts. And it's something that it may look good on paper, but as a business model, in terms of building your fandom up, it's not something that's going to give you great returns there.
My only pushback is that Heim Bloom left to go to St. Louis because his theory versus what what Lloyd and Warner, came up with didn't make sense to him.
Yeah,
And I get the depreciating concept, but at the same time, uh, and I'm not, look, I think the Red Sox have a good young team. I mean, I do like that what they've got,
I
but
yeah,
I don't. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that's the frustrating part because it almost feels like they've kind of stumbled their way in. You talked about Chaim Bloom and his
Yeah.
departure to St. Louis. With my knowledge of the situation, a big part of Chaim Bloom's departure was that he was brought in to kind of build that thing, and they gave
Mhm,
him a list of requirements, and he was following them. He built that farm system. He
mhm,
drafted Roman Anthony. He built really what is the Red Sox team that you kind of see on the field today. He was responsible for a lot of those draft
mhm,
picks and some of those trades to bring those guys in. Um, and when it came time to spend money, he was handcuffed.
mhm,
And that was really where it was a sticking point and frustrating. And there's a reason that Craig Breslow is in the front office right now
mhm.
and not somebody else who is a little higher up. I think Breslow's done a great job, but when
Yeah.
that job opens up, when you have the kind of thinking that the
Mhm,
Fenway Sports Group has had about the Boston Red Sox, it's not been one that has made a lot of sense to not only fans, but now when you're looking at it, these front office guys that they're interviewing for these jobs.
mhm. It's funny. Um, I said that Brian picked the Red Sox. Al Leiter picked St. Louis, and, and he said, "I'm picking St. Louis not today, not this year."
Hmm.
But he goes, Chaim Bloom. He goes, look at all the trades that Chaim Bloom made in the offseason.
Yeah,
All of them. Not one of the players that he traded for, of the many trades he made, the vast majority of them are in the minor leagues.
they are.
And he said, so they're a year or two away, but that's the way Chaim Bloom thinks.
Yeah, and I look at some of the trades, and I can speak specifically to the two they executed with the Boston Red Sox because
Mhm,
I know them, I know the
mhm,
depth, I am familiar with the players that they sent over.
mhm,
They're not going to get, I don't think, a lot of value out of that Sonny Gray return in terms of
mhm,
the. I would say what was one of the top pieces in Richard Fitz. I just
mhm.
don't think that he's going to be something. He's not going to be a starter. Let me put it that
Right.
way. He may be able to transform himself and turn himself into a really good piece out of the bullpen, but he's not going to
Mhm,
be an effective starter. If he could not
mhm,
crack the rotation this year, he's not going to crack any rotation.
mhm,
Um, but really, the guy that they got in return for Wilson Contreras, I believe, if I remember correctly, was Blaze Jordan out of the Red Sox system, and that was a guy who kind of been blocked in the Red Sox system. Was a really high end prospect, though. He was Rule
mhm,
5 eligible. They needed to get something out of him, and that's one where they sent him over there. And he's a guy that has a really good ceiling at
mhm.
first base.
Well, we'll see. I mean, time will tell. But day one, not totally of the opening day of of Major League Baseball, but yet. So today we have baseball. Tonight, I'm sorry, we have basketball, and we'll be back at noon tomorrow to talk about all of it. But any final thoughts before we let you go, so you can get ready to get your popcorn and everything ready for the opening day? Get your hot dogs for the Red Sox game.
Yeah, really, really intrigued. Current leader out there in Houston is Paul Waring. He's 41 years old from
No.
England. He shot a 5 under 30 on the back nine of his round one. This is one of those courses in Houston where um, Matt Fitzpatrick had talked about birdie fests
Yeah.
in his press conference ending last week. This is one of those ones where you're going to get a little bit more of that birdie fest feel. You're probably going to be back to where that cut is under par
Hmm.
tomorrow. And it's also one where you've got guys that are jockeying to make the Masters here.
Hmm.
You look at Ricky Fowler, he's sitting at number 61 in the OWGR. If he has two really good weeks that he's able to put together, he can find himself back at Augusta. Harris English is a guy who's right there on the outside sitting with, I think he's sitting at 56 in the OWGR. He needs a couple good weeks as well to move himself in the top 50. And then, here we go. It's Pearson Cootie sitting at number 51 in the
Hmm.
OWGR, right outside. So far, he's 2 under through 7. I mean, maybe you say it's good. I think he just needs a decent week to get inside that top 50,
Hmm.
make it to Augusta. But you've got to kind of do it for 2 weeks because those OWGR rankings, they move. They're pretty
Hmm.
fluid over these next 2 weeks. So you got to secure yourself inside that top 50
Hmm.
by the time 2 weeks from now.
Well, and the weather's good. out there, so they should have.
It is.
They should have a pretty decent. I'm sorry.
It's going to be hot tomorrow.
Yes, and we'll see how how that affects the ball. But this is going to be crunch time for a lot of guys who want to make it to Augusta.
Yeah, and there's some bigger names that because I don't remember the full list off the top of my head. I don't believe Tony Finau has qualified for the Masters.
No, not yet.
So he's a guy who's out there playing. He's 1 under through 9 right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's tied for 42nd. He needs, if I remember correctly, the way he's standing, I believe he needs a win. One of these
pretty close,
to make it to Augusta. So there are guys out here who are trying to make it there, whether it be by winning or by points.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really where your last 2 weeks are going to fall. And this, I kind of got, I understood watching, because it isn't a tournament that I've watched all that closely these past couple of years. But I understood a little bit more. They've got the greens. Obviously, you're never going to get a 1-to-1
right
in the way that golf course plays. But they have some elevated greens with the sloping off of the sides, kind of the way that Augusta has, except that that deep cut of rough comes in a lot sooner than it does at Augusta.
Yeah. Well, and there's also one of the things that it used to be where the Byron Nelson was played, and it's a challenging golf course. It really is. But what probably is the biggest problem, and you just talked about it, this time of the year, a lot of the golfers aren't used to the heat, and there's going to be a heat factor involved out there, and it's hot, it's muggy, and it's going to be a very interesting, very long 4-day weekend, slogging out for whomever gets it.
Yeah, and also you want to talk about like just I guess strangely set up 9 holes. The front 9 there at Memorial is strange. You got 3 par 3s and 2 par 5s on the front 9. That's and I mean you hit a stretch there at the back where it goes par 3, par 5, par 3. That's 7, 8, 9 for you there. It's
this is with your head.
Yeah, it kind of gets you out of rhythm or doesn't let you establish one.
Yeah. Well, that's wild. All right, we'll keep an eye out for it. And tomorrow, we'll talk about what happened today, both in baseball and in college basketball, because we've another set of 4 games tomorrow night that should be pretty interesting. And we'll catch up on what's going on, and we'll drill a little closer on that Masters situation, on who's getting closer to getting a chance at the green jacket. And we can go from there, boys and girls. Well, for Matt, I'm Jim. Have a good day, guys. Go back, watch your baseball game.